A learning disability is a condition given rising to difficulties in acquiring knowledge and skills to the level expected of those of the same age, especially when not associated with a physical handicap.
Among working-age adults with learning disabilities, only 55% are employed. Only 10% of students with a learning disability are enrolled in a 4-year college within 2 years of leaving school.
The specific learning disabilities that we are going to be talking about are dyslexia, auditory and visual processing disorder, and dysgraphia. Dyslexia is a general term for disorder that involves difficulty in learning to read or interpret words, letters, and other symbols, but that does not affect the general intelligence of a person.
Dyslexia affects up to 1 in 5 people. It occurs on a continuum. One person might have mild dyslexia, while the next person has a profound case of it. Dyslexia also runs in families. It's common to see one family member who has trouble spelling, while another family member has severe difficulty decoding even one-syllable words like catch. The continuum and distribution of dyslexia suggest a broader principle to bear in mind as we look at how the brains of those with dyslexia process language.
Children have a 50% chance of having dyslexia if one parent has it, and a 100% chance if both parents have it. Signs and symptoms of dyslexia are late talking, learning words slowly, difficulty with nursery rhymes and rhyming games, and not being able to spell.
How the brain works with dyslexia. Dyslexia is not an overall defect in language, but a localized weakness within the phonologic module of the brain, where sounds of a language are put together to form words or break words down into sound.
Here's the special way the brains of those with dyslexia work. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere is generally in charge of language and ultimately reading, while the right typically handles spatial activities. fMRI studies have found that the brains of those with dyslexia rely more on the right hemisphere and frontal lobe than the brains of those without it. This means when they read a word, it takes a longer trip through their brain and can get delayed in the frontal lobe. Because of this neurobiological glitch, they read with more difficulty. But those with dyslexia can physically change their brain and improve their reading.
Dyslexics are usually more creative and have a higher level of intelligence. Those with dyslexia use only the right side of the brain to process language, while non-dyslexics use 3 areas on the left side of the brain to process language.
Auditory processing is a natural process of taking in sounds through the ear and having it travel to the language area of the brain to be interpreted.
Usually, a child with auditory processing disorder has normal hearing, but the brain interprets what it hears as if there were a delay or distortion to the sound. This, in turn, makes it difficult for the child to comprehend what has been said, and therefore, he or she is not able to retain the information, thereby affecting their short-term memory. So, although your children may be hearing everything that is said, he or she may be struggling to process the meaning of it. Children with auditory processing disorder will often have trouble focusing on schoolwork, multitasking instructions, and surprisingly, even everyday socializing.
What is visual processing disorder? Visual processing disorder refers to the hindered ability to make sense of information taken in through the eyes. This is different from problems involving sight or sharpness of vision. Difficulties with visual processing affect how visual information is interpreted or processed by the brain.
Visual discrimination. This is the ability to differentiate objects based on their individual characteristics. Visual discrimination is vital in the recognition of common objects and symbols. Attributes which children use to identify different objects include color, form, shape, pattern, size, and position. In terms of reading and mathematics, visual discrimination difficulties can interfere with the ability to accurately identify symbols, gain information for pictures, charts, or graphs, or be able to use visually presented materials in a productive way. The ability to recognize distinct shapes from their background, such as objects in a picture or letters on a chalkboard, is largely a function of visual discrimination.
Dysgraphia is a learning disability in which people have problems including illegible handwriting, inconsistent spacing, poor spatial planning on paper, poor spelling, and difficulty composing writing, as well as thinking and writing at the same time. Here are the signs and symptoms of dysgraphia. People have illegible printing and cursive writing despite appropriate time and attention given for the task. People show inconsistencies with print and cursive, upper and lowercase letters, or irregular sizes, shapes, or slant of letters. Here are strategies to cope with dysgraphia. Suggest a word processor, which is an electric or electronic device or computer software application that, as directed by the user, performs word processing, the composition, editing, formatting, and sometimes printing of any sort of written material. Avoid chastising the student for sloppy or careless work. Use oral exams. Allow use of tape recorder for lectures. Allow the use of a note taker. Provide notes or outlines to reduce the amount of writing required. Reduce copying aspects of work, pre-printed math problems. Allow use of wide rule paper and graph paper. Suggest the use of pencil grips and/or specifically designed writing aids. Provide alternatives to written assignments such as videotaped reports, audio tape reports.
Here's a recap of the 4 learning disabilities we talked about. Dyslexia is a disability that will affect your reading, writing, and spelling.
Auditory processing affects kids' ability to process what they hear in the same way that other kids do because their ears and brain don't fully coordinate. Dysgraphia is a type of learning disability that affects one to recognize forms in letters, to write letters and words on paper, and to understand the relationship between sound spoken words and written letters.
Visual processing disorder is a disorder in which the brain's ability to process pictures, symbols, and distances is weakened.
Learning disabilities are extremely common. Learning disabilities may hinder the speed and ability for people to learn, but it is important to remember that these people are not any different than you. Although people with learning disabilities may read slower, write different, and struggle in their schoolwork, it is crucial to help in their understanding, rather than to make fun or tease them due to their different learning styles. Here are some myths and facts about people with learning disabilities.
People with learning disabilities are less intelligent than their normal peers. Fact: Learning disabilities are not an indicator of an individual's intelligence. They reflect, however, differences in how a person's brain receives, processes, and puts out information.
In fact, studies indicate that as many as 33% of students with learning disabilities are gifted. Therefore, students with learning disabilities can learn and succeed in school and may excel in their professional lives.
Myth: young people with learning disabilities are different.
Myth: people with learning disabilities are lazy.